Shiva I am, and I am exceedingly happy to answer the call of those who are willing to go to a physical location and sound my name, calling me to jump through the veil into the physical realm and clear out these ancient records that need to be cleared out wherever it may be. Certainly I am happy to be here at this moment here in Rome to clear out the records of the Roman Empire that have hung as a heavy cloud not only over this particular place in Rome or the nation of Italy, but the entire continent of Europe and the area around the Mediterranean now for over 2,000 years. It is about time, my beloved, that someone will come forth in a certain measure of Christhood that allows me to jump through and clear out anything below that level of Christhood by which the call is given, and thus those who are willing to be the open door that no man can shut may indeed call forth the presence of Shiva, and I shall jump to the fore and jump in ready with my fire to consume those ancient records of the Roman Empire, all of the warfare, all of the bloodshed, all of the abuse, and what more fitting place to do it here on the Palatine Hill where the Roman emperors lived and where they plotted their schemes for the conquering of vast territories or for the destruction of their enemies, or where those who wanted to be emperor plotted to destroy the emperor, overturn him in some way through some scheme. Oh, this deceit, all this deceitfulness, such an antithesis of truth. What folly this is of men, that they think that what they can hide from each other is hidden from God. Do they not realize that there will come a day where all that is hidden shall be revealed, where nothing can indeed be hidden from the God within, that is, their I am presence that records all that they have ever done in the physical octave? Do they not realize that the Akashic record shows everything, my beloved, and that nothing can be hidden when you go in front of that judge of standing in front of your I am presence and thereby seeing what could have been as your highest potential and what was the potential that you outpicture to your free will. There is no hiding in that moment. There is no hiding when you go in front of your own judge, when you go in front of your own I am presence that will mirror back to you every choice you have made while you descended into the realm of duality. Certainly, your I am presence does not judge you, but you will judge yourself, for you will see what you are asked to see by your I am presence through the filter of the elements of duality that you have not transcended. And thus, this is how you will judge yourself, based on the consciousness of duality that you have not surrendered. You will think it is reality, you will think it is real, necessary, or even that it is mandated by God that you be judged this way. For if you have not taken responsibility for yourself, you will refuse to believe that you are judging yourself, and therefore you must project some authority outside of yourself that is doing the judging, whether you conceive it as God or the devil or something in between. But nevertheless, you will refuse to believe that you are the one judging yourself. Yet this is reality. No one judges you but you. No one makes choices for you but you. No one can change your consciousness for you. You are the one who sees everything, who perceives everything through that state of consciousness. And if you want to see how far into the extremes that this can take a human being, then just study the lives of the Roman emperors, and you will see to which degree of insanity people can go when they are trapped in duality, refuse to see it, cannot even conceive that there could be another way to look at reality than the one through which they see it. As Mother Mary just said, what is the entire problem of the Catholic Church? It is indeed that they have created a mindset, a perception through which one is supposed to look at life. It is completely based on the consciousness of Antichrist, yet they believe it is completely based on the consciousness of Christ, even that the Pope himself represents Christ, as indeed many Romans believed that the emperor represented some higher authority be a this or that god. But they literally wanted to be gods on earth, the emperors, and that is, of course, exactly the desire of the original fallen angels who wanted to be seen as gods on earth, who wanted to be seen as by men as having the authority on earth that only God has. But God does not exercise that authority as human beings conceive of authority, for God is not the ultimate tyrant, even though many people make him out to be so. This is not the case. I indeed, Shiva, I know Brahman, and I know that Brahman is the formless God, and therefore is no tyrant. This Brahman has given you free will. What can be tyrannical about it? You are the one making the choices. If there is a tyrant in your life, you are that tyrant. If there is a judge in your life, you are that judge. If there is a murderer in your life, you are that murderer, by having murdered your own creativity and imagination, allowing your imagination to be entombed in one of these structures built by men. The structures that must come tumbling down for the age of Aquarius to become the age of the Holy Spirit. And thus I, Shiva, have indeed used these words to flow through into the physical octave and manifest my presence everywhere in this Roman forum, these Roman ruins, clearing it out now with the immensity of my fire that is such that no human being can even fathom it. Not even the messenger who is speaking these words can fathom the fire of Shiva. For if anyone were to experience the fullness of that fire, you would instantly be burned away and not be able to maintain even a physical body as a focus in the physical octave. For my fire will accelerate anything into the purity of God. There will be no impurities where my fire is, and thus instantly my fire can clear this entire area of these records going back more than 2,000 years. Certainly, my beloved, the consciousness of the people can start recreating certain records, but I tell you that this is indeed a dispensation for the earth, for the Roman Empire is not just the Roman Empire that you know of history. It represents far more than this Roman Empire, and what exactly it represents I will leave to my beloved Saint Germain, who will now continue this dictation as we seamlessly merge one into the other, and thus I, Shiva, am withdrawing my presence from this place and giving room to Saint Germain. Saint Germain I am, and I too am manifesting my presence in this place. For you see, without the clearing of the records of the Roman Empire, there can be no golden age. Why is this, my beloved? It is so because the Roman Empire represents the exact antithesis to everything that the golden age stands for. What is indeed a reality of the golden age? Why is it a golden age? It is a golden age because people have come to the realization that Jesus spoke 2,000 years ago. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. When you are in the flow of the river of life, everything will manifest for you effortlessly. When you have followed the eternal call of Christ, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Then indeed all things that are right for your growth and for your expression will be added unto you effortlessly. What is then the antithesis of effortless? It is indeed taking heaven by force, seeking to take heaven by force. As Christ said about the fallen angels, who after they separated themselves from the oneness of God, had to struggle for everything. For do you not see that when the one is divided into two opposing extremes, then there must be a struggle between the extremes until one seemingly eliminates the other. And then, just as the one thinks it has triumphed, by having killed the other extreme, well then, it turns out that you, by killing the other extreme, have become everything the other extreme represented. And thus there is no oneness, there is no peace through force or through murder. That which is out of duality can never create oneness, even if one dualistic structure managed to gain the whole world. There would not be oneness, there would not be peace. Even if the entire world was surrendered to the Roman Empire, or the Communist Empire, or the American Empire, or the corporate empire, or the Catholic Church, even so there would be no peace. For that which is built on division cannot create peace. Only that which is out of the oneness and still one with the oneness and thus one with the all can manifest peace. Thus, the significance of the entire myth about the creation of the Roman Empire. There are those who will take any myth literally, and us will want to believe that there was a certain Vestal Virgin who became impregnated and gave birth to 2 twin boys, Romulus and Remus, who were then left in the forest, raised to a certain age by a she-wolf, and then raised to adulthood by a peasant. This, of course, is not reality whatsoever. There is no reality to it. It is a myth that was given to the Roman people as the Roman Empire was beginning to attain the power that made it clear how perverted and force-based it is. It was given to them as a symbol that could be decoded by those who were willing, those who had the awareness to see beyond the outer manifestations. So what does the symbol represent? Well, the Vestal Virgin represents the feminine aspect of God and is striving for purity. Yet, as Mother Mary explained at the Basilica of St. Peter's, when the female has been separated from the Creator, from the divine masculine, then the two polarities of Alpha and Omega, masculine and feminine, will become opposites, and thus the Vestal Virgin does not represent one who is pure, but actually represents the female polarity to the other polarity of the Creator. And thus, the Vestal Virgin represents all of you. Each human being is represented by this. The one who has gone out from oneness, or who by choosing to leave oneness to partake of the forbidden fruit now becomes impregnated and gives birth to the twins as the dualistic consciousness with its two opposite polarities that can only be in rivalry. And so, when it realizes it has fallen, it wants to get rid of that division within itself, that impurity within itself, and thus it wants to leave it. It wants to go out into the forest and leave it where it will never be seen again, and then it wants to try to return back to its normal life instead of facing what it has chosen to manifest and thereby resolving it. And so the Vestal Virgin represents each and every one of you who have created the ego and thus seen it, but then trying to run away from it instead of facing it, facing yourself in a mirror and resolving the duality in your being. Instead, you seek to run away from it. And then what you create when you run away is you create the ego that has two opposite polarities that are always in competition as to which one will dominate you, will dominate your soul and your being. And thus, there will be the rivalry that you saw between Romulus and Remus. And out of that rivalry, springs the consciousness of thinking that you cannot simply receive everything from God, but that you need to take it by force, by forcing your dualistic vision, your dualistic images, your graven images upon the matter light. And thus the entire desire to create an empire based on force is what you see represented in the empire supposedly founded by the twins Romulus and Remus. And then you see also that when you refuse to face the dichotomy, the division in your own being, then the rivalry must continue until one of the polarities seems to kill the other polarity, as Romulus killed Remus. And then you have supposedly the Pax Romana, which is the peace that seemingly comes from now you have reestablished some illusion of unity in your being, because the ego has managed to go so far into one dualistic polarity that it seemingly has suppressed the other to where you can forget about it, and thus you have established what we have called a state of equilibrium in your being, a false equilibrium where you sense you have this peace, but it is a peace that is based on suppression by force of all creativity of the life force itself. Do you not see that what has happened precisely is that you have done what Jesus said? You have built a structure in your mind, and that structure is symbolized then in the outer empire, the Roman Empire, that seeks to conquer the entire world in an attempt to avoid facing the divisions within itself. And yet, even though for a time it seemed like the Roman Empire could be successful in suppressing the entire world through force, did there not come a time inevitably where the division from within, the insanity of the emperors and the leaders of the Roman Empire, created such corruption in the top, such division, such rivalry, such infighting, that eventually the empire was weakened to the point where it was now conquered by the barbarians, so to speak, from without? This is indeed a symbol for the process that is going on in the consciousness of every human being that has descended into duality. There will be times where it seems like your ego has managed to quell the division, but it is a peace that is obtained only through force, and therefore it cannot last, it cannot be maintained, it cannot survive for long. And there will come a point then where out of the subconscious mind comes the beast of the earth or the beast of the sea that suddenly sticks up its ugly head. And now your peace is shattered, and now you are in a negative spiral, as this messenger has recently described, that even those who are on the spiritual path can almost in an instant switch from being seemingly going upward on that path to now being caught in a negative spiral where they are focused only on the negativity in others and in judging others, and again not looking at themselves in a mirror. I must tell you, as the hierarch of the age of Aquarius, that this going from one extreme to the other with periods of relative peace in between can continue indefinitely until you run out and stand before the second death. And what is it you must face at that second death? It is the death of the mortal self. And the question now is, will your conscious self, will the conscious you be willing to give up that mortal self? And in many cases this is extremely difficult to do if you have been trapped by that illusion of duality for so long and have been unwilling to question it for so many lifetimes. How can you then suddenly question it when you stand before that final opportunity? Many cannot, and that is why we of the Ascended Host have done everything we can think of to give the teachings that will empower you to face it now rather than later. Will you wait another 2,000 years before you face the division in yourself? Will you reincarnate again and again throughout the Aquarian age with this division in your beings? For if you do, I must tell you that you will become a dead weight that will not help build the golden age of Saint Germain. And so I say to you, learn from the Roman Empire. Do not project that this was some crazy emperors that did all of this, but see the parallels to what is going on in your own being as I have described them for you. Be willing to see it. Be willing to see the structures you have built in your mind, and then begin to question those structures. If you can, then look beyond the surface and go deeper until you reach the foundation, and question that foundation until the foundation itself begins to dissolve and the structures built upon them then easily crumble, my beloved. And the foundation, of course, is found in your etheric body and your identity body. That is where you must go and question. For if you question at the higher levels, then you will be confused and get nowhere for a long time. Go to the core. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, the right use of your discernment, that you may see beyond the dualistic extremes, and not always find the dualistic argument that supports what you want to believe, but in reality go beyond what you want to believe and going into the reality of truth, as Mother Mary spoke about, the truth that will heal you so that you can be free to again have that free imagination, to imagine who you are in God, accept who you are in God, and then imagine what you can bring to this earth as your contribution to the manifestation of the golden age, when you are flowing with the river of life instead of being based on force, the force that always seeks to destroy something, to put down some part of life, for it cannot conceive of raising up all life all at once, and thus it must seek to raise up itself by putting another part of life down. And this is the curse of duality that has been hanging over this earth now for so long that I would prefer not to tell you how long it has been here, for you would be discouraged and think that it could never be dissolved. Yet I tell you, with God all things are possible. With God in you all things are possible. And thus, this is my call to you this day. Rise up and win your freedom by looking at the very thing you are not willing to look at, by looking at the very thing you are afraid to look at, by looking at what you left in the forest so many lifetimes ago, when you supposedly left the Garden of Eden, but you were not cast out of the Garden of Eden. You left it because there was something you were not willing to look at. Look at it now, for it is only in looking at it and going right into it that you will be free of it, because it is only by going into it instead of running away from it that you will see the duality of it, that you will see the fallacy of the dualistic arguments, and therefore you will see the reality that all life is one. You will see the one truth of Christ that will set you free, that will set you free from the dualistic illusions that have created a veil around you, so that you think that what you see through the veil is reality. I, Saint Germain, come to rend the veil, and I say it is not reality, it is unreality. I am outside the veil. I am free. Raise your mind so that I do not have to speak to you through a messenger who has raised his mind. Raise your mind that I may speak directly to you in your heart, mind, and being. For what one has done, all can do. If one can rend the veil and make contact with the ascended host, then so can everyone, if they are willing to follow the process, to see what others are not willing to look at. It is in seeing that you are set free. Look how they say that seeing is believing. No, seeing beyond the dualistic mind is not believing. It is knowing, it is experiencing, it is being one with truth. What is the need for belief when you have reality? When you are one with reality, do you think Christ believes in God? No, Christ experiences the reality and oneness of God. Belief has been transcended, for belief only is needed in the dualistic mind that cannot experience truth directly. for it sees everything through the veil that it is not willing to question. Thus, question your perception. Question your perception. This is where you find the key to the kingdom of heaven. Question the structure. The structure is not the key as the Catholic Church claims. It is questioning the structure, allowing the structure to crumble, that is the key to the kingdom of heaven. And that is the key that Jesus gave to Peter, the willingness to question. Yet Peter was not willing to use it. And thus again you see the folly of an organization based upon Peter instead of being based upon Christ. What indeed is the folly of saying that an organization can trace its succession back to Peter, and Peter was the first pope? Do you not see how this is a complete perversion of the teachings of Christ? What is the need for a pope when each person has the kingdom within him? How can there be an outer person, an outer organization who holds the keys to the kingdom of heaven when the kingdom of heaven is within you? How can you need someone outside yourself in order to unlock that inner kingdom? It is a complete perversion of the teachings of Christ. And as you see right there, you see the admission by the Catholic Church that they do not represent Christ. They represent Peter, who denied Christ 3 times by not being willing to use the key of discernment to answer those questions from the perspective of the Christ instead of from the perspective of the human, where he feared to be crucified with Christ, instead of going within, unlocking the imagination that would allow him to give a Christ-like answer. Thus you see, from the very inception, the Catholic Church represents, indeed, the fallacy of the duality consciousness, where you are recognizing that there is something beyond duality and it is Christ, but then you immediately accept the false belief that you cannot reach it on your own. And therefore, because you are not willing to look at what it is that stands between you and Christ, you create a structure on earth, and then you begin to believe that the structure itself will take you to heaven, that the structure itself will unlock the door for you, that if you just submit your individuality to the structure, then the structure will take you to heaven. But who are you? What are you? You are a co-creator with God. You were given the gift of individuality, of individual free will, of individual creativity, of individual imagination. How do you imagine that you will get to the kingdom of heaven? By expressing your individuality and your creativity and imagination to its full measure. This is how you will get to the kingdom of heaven, by expressing your creativity to the point where you are so filled with the creativity of God. You have seen everything on earth through that clarity of the Christ vision, and thus you are ready to transcend everything on earth and enter into the ascension coil. For you have nothing left that you want to do or experience on earth. Do you see that it is not by denying your creativity that you enter heaven? You only postpone your entry into heaven by denying it. It is only by expressing it that you enter heaven. Yet what is it that is demanded by these earthly structures? Look at the Roman Empire. Everyone had to submit to the emperor. Look at the Catholic Church. Everyone has to submit to the Pope and the Church. What is it that is demanded here? It is that you submit your individuality your creativity, your imagination to the structure. And what is the structure? It represents what you have created, what the ego has created in your own mind. And thus, as the monster of Dr. Frankenstein, that monster that you have created out of being unwilling to look at yourself and your choices, that comes back to demand that you submit to it, and that you destroy, that you kill the very life force, the very creativity, imagination, and individuality that could take you away from it. The structure you have created demands that you kill it, that you kill the reality of who you are, that you kill the key to the kingdom of heaven. And yet at the same time the structure claims that it can take you to heaven. When, my beloved, will you wake up from this folly? When will you wake up from this illusion and see the reality that we are telling you over and over again in so many different ways, that it should be possible for each and every one of you to find one way, we have said this, that will unlock this vision and understanding for you. Yet the reality is that if you are not willing to go back and look at yourself, look at that original choice to go into duality, then there is nothing we can do for you. Nothing we can say will cause you to open your mind, for you can always find a dualistic argument that seemingly justifies why you do not have to look inside yourself, why you can continue to look outside. For there is this and that evil in the world that must be corrected or judged or criticized by you. Nay, stop looking outside yourself and look the only place where you will find the key to the kingdom of heaven. Look inside yourself. Look at your own structures of the mind, and then go down to the very foundation. Go down into the tomb where the Peter consciousness is buried deep below in the crypt. Find that sarcophagus and shatter the lid of it that you may see inside. And what will you see? Nothing but illusion. Nothing but illusion. Do you need to fear an illusion? Nay, you do not. Only the illusion makes you think you need to fear the illusion. Appeal to whichever ascended master is closest to your heart, that we will take you by the hand, that we will go down those stairs into the catacombs, into the crypt, where that sarcophagus is, where you left your creativity, your individuality, your imagination in God. Shatter the veil, shatter the lid of the sarcophagus. Be willing to look at the original decision you made to leave it out there in the forest, and then reclaim the reality of who you are. Reclaim your individuality. Accept it. Accept that you are a worthy co-creator with God. Accept it and merge into it, that you may be who you truly are. That is freedom, and that is the key to manifesting the golden age of Saint Germain, rather than another 2,000 years of struggle. Do you see what I am saying here? The golden age will not be manifest by some man-made structure conquering the entire world and forcing them to build something that looks beautiful outward, but inwardly it is full of dead men's bones. No empire, no church, no structure will bring the Aquarian age. Only co-creators with God, using their full creativity and imagination, will be the open doors for the manifestation of the golden age. For only God will build the golden age, and it will be done effortlessly or not at all. Thus, What more is there to say with words? And thus I again, as I did recently, encouraged you. Spend some time to find the point of stillness, and then you will receive the directions from there, from stillness, from stillness, from stillness. The stillness that I am.